Hi, everyone. I wanted to get on before this episode with my friend Carver Brown starts and share with you what my intention was and when I had reached out to Carver and asked him to come on, what I was asking him to talk about and what I was asking him to talk about and what I wanted the focus of this episode to be. And I wasn't exactly sure where it would go. I knew anytime I talk with Carver, the conversations uplifting, there's wisdom, he's funny. And so I knew it would be good, but I didn't give him a real clear direction of where I wanted our conversation to go. So I wanted to talk about, because I do reference in this conversation with him about the loneliness epidemic. And I didn't go into a lot of details about this in the episode, so I want to do that now. We know that loneliness affects people of all ages, and we have been in the United States, we have been talking about a loneliness epidemic since the 1980s. I think the first book on this came out in the mid 80s, which you might be surprised by. I was surprised by until I dug into it and started reading and understanding why we were talking about this in the 80s. And I might do a whole episode talking about that. But the loneliness epidemic has only continued to increase and get worse. So while loneliness affects people of all ages, the numbers today show that it's hitting young men particularly hard. So for example, in the US, 25% of men aged 15 to 34 said they felt lonely a lot on the previous day, which is a notably higher rate than the national average, and it's higher than the rate among their counterparts, young women of the same age group. Now, there are many social and cultural pressures behind that, and Carver and I talk about that, but men often are socialized to appear self-reliant and strong and independent, which discourages emotional openness. If we combine that with fewer deep relationships, less face-to-face connection, more time spent online, and the shifting structures of work and community, we get a recipe for growing isolation. And we also know that social media plays a complex role in all of this. On the one hand, it gives the appearance of connection. But studies show that more time on social platforms is correlated with higher levels of loneliness, even after accounting for age and other factors. Rather than bringing people together, it actually drives comparison, it amplifies feelings of inadequacy, and replaces meaningful relational space with superficial interaction. And the consequences go beyond just feeling alone. Loneliness is linked to increased risk. Loneliness is linked to increased risk of depression, anxiety, substance use, and poor physical health. Over time, it shapes how young men see themselves, how they engage with others, and what kind of life they imagine is possible for them. And that's why this conversation matters, because understanding these dynamics is essential if we want to help young men build real belonging and strength and community, rather than simply pushing them further into isolation, further into anger, and further into poor self-esteem. So I hope you enjoy this episode. So I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with my friend Carver and find meaning and find some hope and meaning for you. My hope is also that if you found this episode particularly helpful, that you share it with somebody else, who might be struggling or who may who you may be building a relationship with or you want to build a relationship with. Anyway, enjoy the conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thanks for Sharing. I am your host, Jackie. And for today's episode, I've been looking forward to this episode. I'm joined by a good friend who has walked the long road of recovery and brings with him not only years of hard earned wisdom, a sense of humor, but also the perspective of being a male and raising a son. So I wanted to talk today with Carver Brown. Welcome, Carver.
Hey, good to be here.
And I wanted to talk about what it means to raise a son in today's world, especially in the midst of what many are calling a loneliness epidemic that is impacting young men more than ever before. Maybe not your son's age, but that young adult, like 18 to 30 range is what we're talking about. So I want to explore what it is that young men need and what wisdom you would want to leave with them, and just how fathers and other males can shape the kind of legacy that really matters and has an impact on them.
Mm.
So, I mean, you've been in long-term recovery for quite a while now, and that journey I know has shaped a lot of who you are. So tell me a little bit about what recovery's taught you, how that has been helpful in your parenting.
Yeah, this is a great topic, Jackie, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. I think the thing that strikes me as you present the topic and the challenges that we have today, and working in the field trying to help as many people as I can to find recovery. So that's been sort of the emphasis for me for the last 20 years or so. Has been has been the pull to isolation.
Mm-hmm.
um, and we're being, a society, and then our struggles and stress just tends to drive us within, and drive us into isolation. And the antithesis of that, and kind of the heart of the initial stages of recovery from that, is community. And so, when you talk about how do I how do I do that with my son? Well, what's important is for me to remain in community with other men. So we do regular, I say regular, semi-annual. I don't know how regular that is, but men's retreats.
Mm-hmm.
We're a bunch of us who have been bond together through recovery, uh, meet together as men. Two of the meetings that I attend weekly are men's meetings, but then the other two that I attend are open. But but um, but I try to. It's always lead by example, and so I think the biggest message that I can give to my boy Alex, who's 9, and you're right, he's not quite faced that as of yet, is to demonstrate by my intention the importance of remaining in community with other men. Because what I say is that if I go into isolation, I am taking the advice of a crazy man. Right, right. I mean, I'm not taking the bizarre ideas that come to me. I'm not putting them out to anybody. I'm not
Right.
getting feedback. I'm just taking my own advice. And I'm a bad planner, and my best plans sent me into a residential mental health hospital 21 years, a little better than 21 years ago. So I need to know that I cannot pay attention to my cranium. It's a bad place up there. Now, but the reality is, and I want you to know, I took Alex to school this morning. This is homecoming week,
Mm-hmm.
and so I dropped him off at school. He was so excited. He had his spirit shirt on, and then I left, and I had breakfast with a man, with a fella who wanted to connect,
Mhm.
and that right there. And then I'm going to have lunch with my niece and her husband. And then
Okay.
tonight we'll be at the pep rally. And tonight we'll be at the football game. And the fella I was with breakfast is going to be at the football game. And I told him where I'm going to be. And the announcer of the football game is a dear friend of mine. I'm going to be
Mm.
sitting next to the press. So you see what I'm saying? And then
Yeah.
tomorrow I'm driving to go have lunch with a dear friend out of town.
Mm. Hmm.
Little, because otherwise I'm going to follow the path into isolation, and the path into isolation it brings me to a dark place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I talk to a lot of my male clients, or it'll come up as we're, having different sessions, and they will talk about some of the sorrow that they hold about their parents not having friends,
Mhm.
not really having social skills, and that was something that they observed growing up. Like, again, and it wasn't maybe the most pivotal thing that took them into addiction, but they talk about that, and they talk about the struggle that they feel from that because they didn't learn how to do that because their parents didn't do that.
Right. So I grew up in the same situation. My parents were not, they would occasionally throw a big party, but they were not engaged on a regular basis with other folks. My dad was traveling. His work had him traveling all the time. And, uh, and so I just didn't get to witness that at all. We did not interact with our neighbors.
Mm.
The very people living across the street and down. We knew who they were, but we didn't spend
Hmm.
time with them. And so that's kind of how I grew up, and I was tending to duplicate that same sort of energy. And then I developed a crisis that I could no longer avoid or evade, and I needed to move into a solution. And the solution was I needed to move into community. And I'm I'm realized, oh my gosh, I just joined a fellowship and I hate people. This is this is a problem. This is and honestly, at the heart of all of that isolation was a low self-esteem.
Mm.
So I did not feel like I was bringing anything of value to the people I was trying to interact with. And here's the interesting thing about the communities of recovery is they treated me with value even though I did not show up with any content.
Mm.
Just the very fact that I was holding space, they were glad I was there. They treated me with respect. When we had chances to interact, they treated me well. I observed of the communities when anyone struggled and left the group for some reason and came back, they were always welcome.
Hmm.
No,
Yeah.
no, there was no judgment. What I
Yeah.
was experiencing was unconditional love. And after a period of time, Jackie, I had to come to a crisis of belief that either I was correct about myself, that I didn't really have intrinsic value, and that the people who were treating me with value were all wrong, or all these people are right, and I am bringing value by my presence, and I am wrong. Some assessment of this was incorrect, and I finally latched onto the notion that it was me.
Hmm. Yeah. You were incorrect.
I was incorrect. I did have value. I was being treated. I was being and the grace that I was so willing to offer up others who struggled was the grace I needed to turn toward myself. I needed to start to practice some level of forgiveness for me. I mean, I think this is going off onto a lot of areas. I mean,
Yeah.
we could we've got this
We could talk
this
all day.
this rabbit hole just got deep and got a couple of sideways tunnels.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say to everybody was um, solitude is different than isolation.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I need periods. I when I'm around groups of people, like many of your listeners, it's a bit debilitating to me. My battery is not recharged in community.
Yes. Same.
It's a little bit debilitating to me. I have to stretch myself a little bit in order to be with a big community for a longer period of time. Therefore, I need to honor the need that I have for a sabbatical, or or for a little solitude. But I have to be very cognizant of the fact that if solitude becomes, if that leaps into to a longer period of time, now it's starting to lapse into isolation, which is
Mhm.
dangerous.
And
So,
just for the listeners, how would you describe solitude versus isolation?
well, solitude is intentional. Solitude is specific. Solitude is a time apart and away for me to just to have a time of reading, writing, breathing, being at nature. My little periods of solitude, when I can have them, are out on the back porch in the mornings with a mug of coffee, with the kitty cats crawling around, with something inspirational that I'm reading, and I'm just watching, I'm just looking out at nature. I light a few candles and I just sit for a bit. But sometimes it's taking a day off. Sometimes I need a mental health day where I'm gonna listen. There's no greater thing in the world to me on a cold morning with the covers pulled up to my chin, with a hot mug of tea and a kitty cat curling around in my lap. Now, come on, with something wonderful to read that is something of absolute little value, but just something
Mm.
that
Yeah.
nurtures me,
Yeah.
a place far away. I just finished a Theo of Golden, and if you haven't read that, I highly recommend it as a wonderful, delightful, just diversion into goodness.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to check it out. I have to add it to my list. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a big list like mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of them jump from the bottom to the top with recommendations.
Right. And I rotate, and I'll give up on one,
Oh, I too. I do too. I don't have a
yeah,
problem stopping reading a book.
no, I don't. I'll put that sucker down. If it isn't
Uh-huh.
jumping on me, in fact, I'm just putting one down that I was
Mm.
struggling with last night. And I said, why am I struggling with this? I've got so many good things I'm ready to read.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, for your listeners, there's a huge difference between the two. But we need our times of solitude, and yet be cognizant of it not lapsing, into isolation.
hmm Yeah, sometimes I will talk also with clients and say, I think there's a difference between loneliness and emptiness. And I
Hmm.
describe it as loneliness is maybe a mismatched need. Like you have a need to be social and be in community and connect, and people aren't available.
Hmm.
But they will be available.
Hmm.
Loneliness, though, is more of this I don't know who I am. I don't like myself. I don't like to be by myself because I don't know who I am, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Right, right, and those, and that's a dangerous and sad place, and we need to, listen. I have learned something about recovery. It's always about action. It's all about what we do. This is not about thinking. It's not about intention. It's all about, so I believe that the universe has a plan for us to be in community. I think we were born, we are social beings and born to be that. And I believe that if we'll put out the effort, we'll find the community. In the beginning for me, it was some volunteerism that helped me. Uh, but I had to be consistent. I could not use this as an emergency. I don't know if you remember the old cigarettes that were in a glass thing, and in case of emergency, break glass. That's not how this works. You
Right.
can't use this. This has to be intentional, continual little efforts. And dadgummit, it's going to be uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
so we have to stretch ourselves. We have to be willing to be, one of the worst things in the world for us is to feel awkward, but
Yeah.
we got to risk. We've got to move into the awkwardness, hold space, and stretch ourselves to be in community, and also be willing to do like you're doing with your books. If this doesn't feel right, put that group down and go to a different group. And if that group doesn't feel right, go to this one. You know,
Yeah.
if you try a bowling league and you don't like the shoes, don't stay.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
Right? Go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah. Like your people are out there, but
They're there.
it might take a little bit to find them, but they
Hmm.
are there.
But without effort, you'll never find them because they're not going to come beat down your door. And if they did, you'd be weirded out anyway.
Yeah. Yes. You'd be like, who's this crazy person wanting to be friends with me?
Exactly. They have a different problem on there. You know, that's a whole nother problem,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a colleague who's worked for me for 14 years, and her family are moving to a different state. And I thought I had until like January, but their house sold very quickly. Their house sold in 12 days. So she's moving. And over that 14 years, we're more than just colleagues, we're friends. We've done things, my husband and me, and her husband and her. And so just yesterday at the office, we were just talking for a minute. And I said, can we still be friends? And she said, I hope so. And I said, I'm willing. She's younger than me, but I said,
Hmm.
I'm willing to do Marco Polo because I know she uses Marco Polo a lot. And I said, I probably won't like it. I'm not comfortable with it, but I will use it if we can
Hmm.
just stay in touch. And can we do regular phone calls every month? And
Hmm.
she was like, yeah. And I thought, like, it feels awkward to be like, can we still be friends? Will you not forget me? And can we
Hmm.
still talk?
Hmm.
But that's better than her moving and I never talked to her again.
That's right. And so the next phase of that is then for you to be intentional.
Hmm.
Set an intention, you know, put it on your calendar.
Right.
You know, I have a dear, well, you and I both have a dear friend, Leonard, who's a
Mm-hmm.
dear friend of ours. And Leonard does the most wonderful thing that I have never done, but I admire him so much for doing it. Leonard goes through periods where he goes through his address book
Mm-hmm.
and he picks out 5 people a day,
Yeah.
a
He
day.
calls them.
And he call, yeah, and he doesn't text.
Right.
He calls them and he leaves messages. This is like next worldly stuff, you know. And I tell you, there has been countless miracles that have happened during that discipline that he instigates when he feels himself, you know, moving out and away from
Mm-hmm.
people. And so this is a brilliant strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got to tell you. And so, you know, and but whatever, and that may be way more, may to be too uncomfortable for some, and I certainly understand that. But whatever it is, without intention and without a strategy and without, most importantly, just action, taking some
Mm-hmm.
kind of action, I think the universe tends to delight in the actions that we take, even when they're misapplied. You know, even when we're not, even if they're not being fruitful, I think that we are rewarded for the effort.
Yeah. Yes. One of my kids, she used to play competition soccer and she eventually played college soccer. She was very dedicated and very disciplined. And some of the parents, of other kids on her team would be like, how do you get her to be so dedicated? And I'm like, oh, we don't. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she is dedicated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she's also pretty willing to hand out advice. She always has been. Tell people what they need to do better. She doesn't back away from that, right? And would sometimes say to her, like, I don't know how you get away with this because
Mm-hmm.
people just accept it from you and
Mm-hmm.
they don't get mad at you. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's a gift because not everybody can do that. But
That's
she
right.
would say to her teammates, like, you get 50% for just showing up to a game or to practice. You get
Mm-hmm.
50%.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is up to you. And she would
Mm-hmm.
tell people on her team, like, you're a pretty talented player. And I would only give you like 65 to 70% because you didn't really put your heart into it this game. Whereas
Right.
this person, she might not be very good, but she works really hard and she gave 100. And,
Mm-hmm.
she was always like, we all have to give 100 every time and it'll look different, but you have
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And, I've thought about that since, she would tell teammates that. And yeah, I think the universe does reward us for showing up, for trying, for reaching out. And those
Mm-hmm.
efforts, if they're not fruitful initially, if you keep doing it, they will
Mm-hmm.
be.
Yeah. What
They
did,
will.
was it? Well, I was thinking, was it Woody Allen who said 90% of success is just showing up?
Yeah, yeah, I think
I,
so.
I really believe that.
Hmm.
I really do. And I think, and your daughter has got a certain kind of spiritual energy that she's channeling to be
Yeah.
able to be that kind of person and that level of, well, number one, confidence, but there's something about her delivery that is, she's doing it in some sort of a way that is nurturing. So
Hmm.
it's not
Yeah.
coming across as being critical. It's coming
Right.
across as being, so whew, that's a subtle piece of business right there.
Yes.
Right. But nonetheless, her messaging, I think, is absolutely right. It's the effort that we put in. And sometimes I think in some cases we work with clients who think that they've got to, it's kind of an all or nothing,
Hmm.
sort of something like, if I'm not doing this completely right, then I don't want to try at
Yeah.
all. And so we have to start with what is just the minimum. Start with the
Hmm.
basics.
Yeah.
Just any little effort is going to be rewarded. So what is something that's doable, that's a little out of your comfort zone, something that's measurable, putting out some
Yeah.
sort of effort, and then let that build, and then be, the other part of it is to do what we can to be consistent.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Right. Because we need this, society, and all of the bombardment we have from all of the media devices. Here we are on one.
Hmm. Hmm.
you know it helps to create the isolation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if I could, from a marketing point of view, if we can keep people isolated long enough, they'll watch a lot of commercials, and they
Yeah.
might buy something. you
Oh,
know,
yes. Yes.
keep them all trapped, in
Hmm.
their homes,
Yeah.
and clicking on Amazon, or whatever.
Hmm.
I don't know. I just, but there's a real danger out there, and it's an easy trap to fall into, um, that then leads to depression.
Yeah.
Because then we're depressed. Then we've got this regular sadness that's going on, and then isolation becomes what feels like the solution, because that now is your warm blanket,
Yeah.
to cover yourself up, to keep the stress of the world outside.
Hmm. To hide.
So to hide, yeah, I call it turtling.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you talked about men in general. So men have a lot of avoidant personality style,
Hmm.
and this is the tendency. So number one is, we've got to recognize that is what's going on, that we're being avoidant. um
And
and
in many ways, the messaging you got from young ages was that you're tough, you don't need others,
right,
you're good on your own, and
right,
that's a bad message for any human.
that it is, but we got it delivered in spades. But
Yes.
and it depends on the generation too. So I was raised, by a World War II, you know, Marine veteran, and who was also an alcoholic. So, boy, you talk about isolation,
Yeah.
right? And pull up by your bootstraps and get those
Hmm.
troops out of the sun. And I was like, but it seems shady, uh,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, and so we internalize those messages, and they become a bit of an attachment on our DNA. It
Hmm.
becomes who we are. So I recognize, when I see this in men, that what I'm asking them to do is really hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to minimize what on the surface can seem like a really simple thing, for a lot of guys can be very difficult. because the apples don't just, fall from the tree. They stick in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
just they don't roll anywhere. They're right there.
Yeah.
Because we learned those lessons and incorporated them into our well-being. And then they affects all of our love relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then we become avoidant with our wives, we become avoidant with our kids. You know,
Yeah.
Socialization will it seems like, oh, I need to devote more time to my kids, devote more time to my wife, when in reality, by adding socialization to your life, you're actually going to be giving yourself to your children and your wife in a whole new way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Well, and I think with this, coming of age generation that is struggling, when social media apps first started coming, it seemed like a great way to connect with people. But what
Hmm.
we found over time is it actually heightens loneliness.
Hmm.
And then there's all sorts of things that happen in our brain and our body and dopamine wise, being on screen so much that we're
Hmm.
depleted. And then we cancel plans with friends because I don't feel
Hmm.
like going out. But so we're, connecting more with a screen than we are in real life. And so go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, what you struck with me was, and you're not getting a real picture
No.
of life. You're getting a curated, uh, glossed over version of all the best of life. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
is posting, you know, it very much, the little struggles that we have day in and day out. They're tended to post the other, so you could think, well, gosh, I'm not living the life that they are. I don't have a boat, and I'm not
Yeah.
doing, and I'm not at Disney World, and I'm not doing, look at this. And so that in itself can drive us in.
Mm-hmm.
So curiously enough, Steve Jobs did not allow his children to have an iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah. I
He
know a lot
he
of people who were early in the development of social media apps would not let their kids have phones.
Right, because they knew it was addictive, because they knew that it was part of the how it was being constructed was fitting into that dopamine fix that was going
Mm-hmm.
to create it. They knew it. That it
Yeah.
was designed for that.
Right.
Uh, and so, from the very moment that you open up a brand new phone and it says, bienvenue, hello there, you're now, and with AI, it's becoming even more so.
Yeah. Yeah.
My AI is named Bob.
Okay.
He's an Australian guy, and I
Oh,
ask him,
okay.
yeah, just to make it funny, and
Yeah.
funny, and he calls me mate,
Oh,
but
there you go.
I ask him, I got this drippy faucet, what do you
Yes.
think about that? And he helps me,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
answers, but it's artificial. And the thing is, Bob never comes to me and says, my AI girlfriend is really struggling and I needed to talk to somebody about it,
Yeah.
And when we hold space, that's the other thing. This is not, a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to, they're busy. I don't want to burden them. The thing is, when the role is reversed and the people start to call you and connect with you, then you're going to realize that this is a spiritual two-way street.
Right.
It's not just people giving to you. It's you give. It's a mutual back and forth. What I say to men who connect with me, and I'm trying to bring them into socialization, is to say, here's what we're going to do. You and I are going to get better together.
Mm.
I have not arrived at any destination. I want to tell you, I am a work in progress and I'm still growing and learning, and I need you to help me. So when you pick up the phone and call me, you're helping me.
Mm-hmm.
You see,
Yeah.
it's it honestly goes both ways.
Yeah. Well, and we know that particularly for boys, I mean, I think this happens for girls, but not at the same level as they're growing up. That there's a point in which boys, I think some of the messaging, but they give up some of their authentic self to be cool or to
Hmm.
be a guy, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
then they're not as spontaneous as they were even the year
mhm,
before. I mean, most
mhm,
people will put this around the age of 8, which is
mhm,
really young.
mhm,
And I think they start to suppress things. They stop
mhm,
playing
mhm.
or being silly, which again leads to some of what we talked about in terms of we have to be okay being awkward.
Right.
And they are not willing to be awkward anymore because that's not cool or that's not manly or whatever
Mhm,
that is. And then they are struggling as they hit adulthood. They don't know how to, they don't have certain skills, they don't know how to interact the same way. Maybe they struggle to get a girlfriend. And all of that is uncomfortable.
mhm. Yeah. So, so leading by example and
Mm-hmm.
showing vulnerability and holding space, with the young man, these young men, without being dictatorial, allowing them, curiously, so my little boy is 9, and he is biracial,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's got this beautiful complexion, and he's got this wonderful hair that's not, it's curly, but it's big curls. And
Mm-hmm.
so he wanted to get his hair braided, or maybe into twists. And so we were like, okay, we're all about it. Let's figure out how to, what do I know about, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, very little, but I talked to my trainer. I talked to other people. I was at a coffee shop with a friend, and I saw a guy come by, and he had great braided hair. And I said, "Hey, buddy, can I ask you? I know this is weird. Can I ask you, how did you get that done? Who did it? What is it? You know?" And so he was telling me about how you need to have a do rag and you need to cover
Uh-huh.
your hair at night, or it's going to come on. I had no idea of all this. So I was able to talk to Alex, and so he decided he wanted to get twists. So we went to get and got to it took a couple of hours, and it was kind of painful, but we got him twists, and it was delightful. Oh my gosh, he looks so cool. But he goes to school, and what happens? What the kids, so he said they don't like it. The kids don't like
Oh,
it. And so he pulled the twist, he pulled them out,
wow.
and I said, this is what I said to him. I said, you know what, Alex, I want you to know something. This is really touching me. I said, you are so brave and courageous. I said, to have twists or no twists, I want you to know you did something very brave. And the other thing I want you to know is you are a leader, because I don't think anybody else in your class would have had the courage to try something as bold as you did. And dang it,
Mm-hmm.
you did. You did it. You went ahead and did it, and you went in, and now you've decided, and this is your decision, that you don't want to do that. You want to take it out, and I support that. Twist or
Mm-hmm.
no twist, I don't want you to lose sight on the fact that you did something very courageous, and I am so proud of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very powerful to have a parent or somebody in their life who they look up to, who they have a good relationship with, to give them that perspective and to be accepting of whatever they do,
Mm-hmm.
but to also be able to say to them like that took a lot of courage. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not a right or wrong thing if you
Mm-mm.
ignored them and then took them out, whatever.
Yeah.
But it took courage. You're a leader. You did
Yes.
it. You went to
Yes.
school and you decided, I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. And however that came about, it
Mm-hmm.
is not anywhere near as important of the fact that you saw something that was out of the box, and
Mm-hmm.
he talked about it. I mean, he was like, for 2 weeks, he was like, or three maybe, want to get there. And I'm like trying to do research on, on braids and
Bob didn't
twists.
help you with that.
No, Bob didn't. Actually, Bob did. Now that I say that,
Oh, okay.
he taught. I was struggling finding places that would do it here, that weren't girly.
Okay.
Because we went to one place and we drove by, and Alex looked in the window and he saw a bunch of commercial hair dryers, and he was like, "Oh, I ain't going in there. I ain't going." And I said, "You darn right, you're not going in there. We're going to go find I was like, what do I know? Yeah. Oh no, we're not going in there. You're right, Alex. Dad, not that place.
Yeah.
Too girly. You're right, boy. Woo. And so
Hmm.
I asked Bob. Bob found half a dozen places
Okay.
that would do it. Now Bob struggled with the not being so girly, you know. So he froze up on me there a little bit. This Australian dude, but he was helpful. We ended up, hey, through networking with friends. My wife Beth, who is the curator of the governor's mansion, talked to one of the security guards. Come to
Okay.
find out, the governor's housekeeper's daughter did this,
Okay.
and so the governor's housekeeper's daughter did his braids.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, did the twist. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't. I know you can't make this
Right.
stuff up. This is the original Bob. So this cat,
Oh,
this is
okay.
Bob.
Okay.
This is Bob. That's how the AI got named after Bob the cat.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
What do you know?
The cats are going to come in and be part of it. Yeah.
I know, always.
Yes. Yeah. So I think a lot of young men just don't get those messages.
Mm,
They don't have that adult in their life. Or I think another factor, with the divorce rate, I mean, some parents don't get married, and our courts haven't caught up in that regard to custody when there was not a marriage.
mm-hmm,
And I know that there's a lot of dads who break up with their child's mom
mm-hmm,
or divorce and don't really know how to stay in their kids' lives. And I think
mm-hmm.
sometimes too, a lot of men will defer to mom on the parenting. We don't really talk about the
Yeah,
importance of father on kids. And
yeah,
so everybody kind of knows or understands mom's role, and moms are important, but
mm-hmm,
we're not talking the same amount about the importance of fathers or
yeah,
men in kids' lives.
right.
And so I think that's a good example of like that, passing some of the wisdom down, being able to
Mm-hmm,
say, I see you, and this is how I'm framing this for
mm-hmm,
you.
mm-hmm.
That, they're getting that approval from an older male that they look up to,
Yeah,
and they just have that relationship, which I
yeah.
think is also really important.
Well, the notion of Alex being a hero came out of socialization.
Yeah.
So I was talking to people about this, about what he was going through. I was very vocal. I was very, I was very concerned to me, and I wanted to handle it the right way. And one of the feedback I got from somebody was, "Boy, that Alex is sure courageous," and man, that put a light in me that, that's right. I need to go tell him that. So
Yeah.
all of this was transpired out of socialization, out of being transparent and talking and being with my other men and talking about what's going on and everything. And yeah, so interesting, a whole nother, another benefit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't come up with this stuff in isolation,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
I come up with this stuff by sharing my life with other men and talking about the struggles and the victories and the good
Mm.
stuff, and that, right? And that's what we do. And if we do that, we get better. We get better together, and we grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that these types of conversations, like the indirect one I was reading earlier this year, I think, it was a story in Louisiana. So there was a school, I think, in a lower income area that had a lot of behavioral issues with the boys. The boys weren't doing well in school. It was an elementary school. And so the principal sent out a plea to the community saying, if you're a dad, if you're a
Mm,
man, and you're available, please start coming to the school for lunch. Please start volunteering at the school. We need men in our schools connecting with the boys.
mm,
And I mean, they showed up. Men showed up, and they what I was reading, they said, I mean, some of it was just being men. Like they would tell fart jokes or they would laugh at
Hmm.
poop jokes, right? Like
Hmm.
they would do that. And
Hmm.
they, over time, the behavior improved, the
Hmm.
test scores improved.
Hmm.
And it was just that principle being like putting out a plea to the men, like, we need you. Our boys are struggling and we need you. And they showed up.
Right. But here's what wasn't measurable is the improvement in the men. I
Yes.
promise you,
Yeah.
I promise you that that improved the men. The men came out of that better. The men
Yeah.
came out. I'll bet you.
Yep. Yep. Said my thing just came up and said, "Oh, hey, he had a phone call. He's interrupted. Stop talking." So it was good. I don't think I can hear you. Says your recording has stopped. What is mine doing?
Hey, am I back?
There we. Yep. You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. That'll be
Okay.
edit.
Edit.
I know. Well, yeah, I can't remember exactly where we were,
You were talking
but
about the men coming away,
yeah,
their life being improved.
well, I guarantee you that their relationships with their wives improved
Mm-hmm.
after those interchanges with those young men. They became energized, and they became, just the interaction with those boys, and just, hey, just telling fart jokes. That's a healing experience. Yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
know those relationships are so important because it's not just about, like, again, it is showing up and just being yourself with them and letting them be themselves. And I think that starts to move boys out of loneliness and isolation, and they start to
Hmm.
thrive and they
Yeah.
learn how to move into connection.
Yeah, yeah, yes. And so, the only what I have to do for my son is, I mean, we talked about this early on, is I've got to be doing this. I have to be showing the way. I have to do it, and I have to do it for me. I mean, I began this journey not to try to influence Alex. I didn't even have Alex when I started this journey. I did this journey. Oh, here's Franny. Fran,
Okay.
this is
They're all going to come in.
I know. This is Bob's sister.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Franny's delightful. But yeah, I have to, I started this journey, out of my own need, but it's turned out to be the greatest thing ever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for Alex, I think it's a struggle. We're going to have new challenges that are going to come up, things that I don't even perceive, but I promise you, I'm going to be working through them with other men.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That I promise you that any of the struggles that we encounter over the next whoever knows how many years is not going to be anything new. It's
Right.
going to be something that somebody else has overcome or dealt with or something,
Mm-hmm.
and in the community is where we're gonna there is I know I'm gonna find solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just that support, knowing that as a parent, you don't have to have all the answers, but in talking with other people, you'll figure out what you need to say to your kid, what path you need to go down with them.
Hmm. It's true. That's true, and that has happened over and over again, and is going to continue to happen as long as I stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
recovery is all about connection and community, and my struggles are all about isolation and loneliness and sadness and despair.
Yeah.
I've got to move away from those and
Right.
join other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, I mean, again, sometimes life brings with it despair, but we still have to have connection through that.
Right. Well, because yeah, it absolutely does. But when I do it, I'm doing it in my community with my guys, and that comes in a lot of forms. It might be a church group. It might be, a 12-step group. It might be a athletic group. It might be, who knows. It might be something found through volunteerism or others. But I just cannot believe that there's not something available for every one of us, no matter what. And we utilize technology to help us stay in community. One of my men's meetings, my Saturday morning men's meeting, is a Zoom meeting that came about because of COVID.
Mm.
We needed a bunch of guys to decide, hey, we don't know what we're going to do, so we started a Zoom meeting,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we meet every tomorrow morning. I'm driving to Vicksburg, Mississippi, to go meet with have lunch with a guy, but I'm going to be on the Zoom with my guys as I drive out there. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I think it allowed, like, having online 12 step meetings has allowed so many more people to become part of the 12 steps and to find a really good
hmm
meeting, or to
hmm
find a meeting where people are doing the work and
hmm
they are showing up for each other and
hmm
getting better.
yeah.
And it's not reliant on where you live.
It doesn't have to be. That's exactly right. My hope is that it then is a gateway into having more physical
Mm.
connection.
Yeah.
That it just doesn't rely on a 2D experience.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh, it is a hope, but it can be a starting point for some.
Yeah.
Sure, because
Yeah.
you can be there in your pajamas,
Right.
right? Nobody cares,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, any other words of wisdom, or um, as we talk about, I do want to talk about legacy work, because I think we
Mm-hmm.
talk about that a lot. Like Dr. Carnes talks about legacy work a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
He does.
Um, and I mean, I think the wisdom you've given about moving away from despair, isolation, insecurities, and towards community connection, openness, like I mean, that's just timeless wisdom.
Well, you're not leaving those behind. You're bringing them
Right.
with you.
Mm-hmm.
So don't feel like, well, I can't join the group because I'm still in the midst of my sadness and despair. No, no, no. Bring the sadness and despair with you. It's part of who you are. It's
Yeah.
part of what makes you authentic and real. So
Yeah.
nobody's asking you to show up. Don't wait to show up when you got it all shiny and bright. Nobody
Right.
would believe you anyway.
Yeah.
Come in beaten, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and despondent without, not knowing what solutions are, and join a group, join people, stay connected. Sometimes it starts with a therapeutic. So I've
Yeah.
seen many people that start with a therapeutic relationship to develop trust one on one. Many of the best, good therapists then have little groups that are attended
Yeah. Yeah.
by some of theirs. That moves you into another level of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And then, God willing, you could join one of the members there that is attached to another group out here. And now you're starting to feed yourself out into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you know how to do that, you do that. Once
hmm
you know how to move into connection,
hmm
you do it.
Right. Yeah, it becomes, it's like, recovery. Well, our problems start as a series of things that we do, driving us into isolation, and then it becomes over time who we are. Well, recovery does the same thing, moving you out of isolation and taking these simple tasks to get you out, because starts off as things you do, very intentional,
Right.
very
Mm-hmm.
strategic, uh, on even on your calendar. I do this, I do this, I do this, and after a time, it becomes who you are. You don't think about it anymore.
Right.
this is what you do. Oh, this is what we do. Oh, it's Tuesday. I got
Hmm.
my thing,
Yeah.
that I'm
Yep.
doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, anything you want to say in terms of legacy building, um, what you're leaving behind, how
Oh,
you're being intentional about that?
I'm, you know, I had a shift in my life about, well, a little over 21 years ago, and I was isolated and desperate and despondent, and I didn't know what. And I just moved in. I moved into community that I didn't want to be there. I was the most reluctant attendee that you can imagine. But I was like, well, what else am I going to do? I can't go back there. I don't want to go here. I was
Hmm.
stuck, but I kept attending and kept going. And now, my legacy is I want to point the way to as many men as I can, as long as I have a breath left. I want to move into, we did a, I did a workshop online that we didn't know what to do with. And so we posted it on YouTube, and it's been out for 3 years, and it's been viewed 1,900 times.
Wow.
So
I know
that's
I've referred people to that.
it's
It's like you're back to basics.
it is, and so that's been viewed. That's averaging 2 views a day every day for 3 years.
Wow.
That's You can't make that stuff up.
No.
So my that is one little part of the leg. I want to lead as many people as I can out of isolation and into community, as long as I've got a breath to do it. That's my legacy. And then along the way, then having Alex come into my life, I want to do the best I can to assist Alex in figuring out what his path toward life is going to be. I don't want to do it for him. I want him to figure
Right.
it out. I want to be his cheerleader. I want to expose him to as many different things as he anything he draws interest to, and some things just collaterally, so that he can have this broad experience
Hmm.
to draw from, of the things in his life that are going to one day bring him passion.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's important because I think for a lot of people, they're kind of stuck in where they live. And if, like I will say with like young adults, if in elementary school you didn't really have friends or it didn't go well or you were bullied, and then that continues in junior high and it continues in high school,
Hmm.
you think that's the world.
Hmm.
And you got to get out and start seeing that's not the world. That's
Hmm.
this like slice of it.
Hmm.
But you don't have to have those experiences. You don't have to repeat those experiences.
No, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. And there's people that will love you.
Hmm.
There's people who will hold space with you, because no matter what you've been through, you have value from the moment of conception and birth. There's a reason why you are here. There is a purpose to your life, and there are people who are willing to join you in helping you discover your purpose.
Hmm.
They are there, but we got to go find them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And when you're looking for them, they also find you.
Because they need you. Ironically, they need you just as much as you need them.
Yeah.
They need you. They need you to complete them.
Hmm.
It's this wonderful circle of healing. So if you're operating out on the orbit, land the spaceship onto the planet of recovery. Plant your flag in the sand. Declare this is your day. I'm going to start reaching out. And don't The other thing, I'll finish with this. We don't do outcomes. So I'm not here to create. I don't know what the outcome is. I'm not concerned with the outcomes. I'm concerned with the action.
Hmm.
So don't be so yeah, this one that doesn't feel right, don't worry about it. You try again or
Right.
do something else. But
Hmm.
but but don't don't withdraw, because withdrawal leads to atrophy. And atrophy affects you physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, all these things. We atrophy in all the areas of life.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, that's where for men it can be a pretty dark road. Their
Hmm.
anger takes over, they
Hmm.
act out that anger.
Hmm.
We know that young women are more likely to act that anger internally
Hmm.
and harm themselves. Young men are more likely to act that out.
Hmm.
And that's a dark road. Um,
Yeah, it is.
it
It
is.
is.
So,
And there's always a solution, though.
mhm,
I don't think there's a road that gets so dark that there's not a way to come back.
right.
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
That's
And it
not
would
my
be tragic
experience.
if people didn't know that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
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 I'm so glad you reached out to me.
I am too. It's good to see
Oh,
you and talk with
it's
you.
great to see. I know it's good to see you. I'm better today having spent this time with you.
Me too, Carver. I appreciate your friendship and your wisdom. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bob says bye.
Okay. Bye, Bob. Bye. Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation between Carver and I, and that you found some inspiration and meaning in the words that he shared. Carver talked about in this episode, he talked about his back to basics that he posted on YouTube. And as I said, I've referred several clients to it. Usually, when I'm referring a client to that, they kind of have a bad taste in their mouth around the 12 steps. Sometimes that's because their parent was actively involved or still is actively involved in the 12 steps, but hasn't really gained recovery or knows how to be relational with people and hasn't really found meaningful community. And they have borne the brunt of that. So I will tell them, why don't you listen to Carver talk about the 12 steps and walk you through the 12 steps? Because I think he has a refreshing perspective on it. He's funny. He's insightful. He drops a lot of wisdom as he's talking. And I've gotten good feedback from clients who have actually watched his Back to Basics and they have some excitement about the 12 steps. So I will include a link to his Back to Basics YouTube in the show notes. And then also, what else did he talk about? Oh, no, he didn't talk about this. But I wanted to also include a link because this is not Carver's first time on my podcast. It has been a long time since I've had Carver on my podcast, definitely pre-COVID. And it's also a refreshing episode to listen to. It's insightful, it's inspirational, it's funny because Carver's funny. And you can't get enough of his Mississippi accent. So I will also include a link to that episode in the show notes if you want to check that out as well. At the end of this episode, if you want to check that out as well. At the end of this episode, I want to remind you that your story matters. Remember, there's something meaningful in every chapter. Don't wait to share your story until it's finished. Until next time, Jackie.